Welcome back to the Conspiracy Files. In today's episode, we're covering the mysterious case of the Sodder children. You don't know very much about this case, do you?
No, I'm afraid not, but looking forward to hearing what you have to say about it.
Well, prepare yourself. This is a strange one.
Okay.
1945 on Christmas Eve in Fayetteville, West Virginia. Jenny and George Sodder slept in their house along with 9 of their children when a fire started at around 1 a.m. George and Jenny and 4 of their children managed to escape. However, the other 5 remained in the house. The children who escaped with George and Jenny were Sylvia, Mary, John and George Jr. The children remaining in the house were Maurice, Martha, Lewis, Jenny and Betty, who all shared 2 bedrooms between them upstairs. Upon realising his other children were still inside the house, George tried to break back into the house to save the children, but the staircase was on fire. And when he went outside to grab his ladder, it was missing from its normal spot, and both of his coal trucks weren't working.
Okay, so he goes outside, the house is on fire, his ladder's missing, and then both the engines in his trucks are missing as well.
Yeah.
This guy's not having much luck today.
Well, no, the engines weren't missing, the trucks weren't working.
Okay.
So they never actually checked what happened to the engines. They just, oh no, they weren't working, so they just left that.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah, you're not off to a great start there whenever your ladder's gone and both your coal trucks aren't working.
Yeah, it's not a good day in the Sodder family.
It's really not a good day, is it? One of the children, Marion, who escaped the fire, ran to a neighbour's house to call the fire department, but strangely, the operator didn't answer, and when a different neighbour tried calling, she also got no response from the operator. That same neighbour actually ended up driving to the town and found the fire chief, F.J. Morris herself. Even though the fire department was located only 2.5 miles away from the Sodder house, the firefighters didn't reach the home until 8 a.m, a whopping 7 hours after the fire began, and when they finally arrived, the house had literally burnt to ash.
Yeah, I think it's maybe time to reevaluate your staff there.
Yeah,
on that one.
yeah, I think you can see where your hard-earned tax money's going there, can't you?
I mean, that's not even a small error. That's, 7 hours to drive 2.5 miles.
Yeah.
That's a serious error on the Fayetteville Fire Department there.
I mean, you could literally run and put that fire out yourself.
Yeah, I think firefighters in a different state could get to the fire quicker than
Yeah, 100%. Well, we sat down with the Northern Ireland Fire Department to ask if there was seriously any way that the fire service could arrive that late to a house fire. And did you know that it takes the fire department an average of 1 minute and 15 seconds to get ready and an average of 4 minutes and 2 seconds to arrive to the destination? So in total, that's 5 minutes and 17 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it took Fayetteville 7 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't already bad enough sounding for them, that's definitely rubbed
Yeah.
salt in the wounds for that one.
It really did. Authorities searched the ashes for the 5 remaining children, but nothing was found. The fire chief, F.J. Morris, suggested that the fire might have been so hot that the children were essentially cremated. But this theory makes no sense, because even if the bodies were cremated, the flesh has burnt away, bones are usually still left behind, and there was no smell of burning flesh before or after the fire.
I mean, do they know what burning flesh smells like?
Do you know what burning flesh smells like?
I would assume it smells like meat, I don't know.
I mean, probably not the kind of meat you're thinking of, but
Yeah,
maybe something along those lines.
Yeah, I just think, it's kind of a strange thing to put in a report. Like, you don't really watch a crime drama, and the first thing that they say whenever they go to the crime scene is, "Oh yeah, I can smell that burning meat."
I mean, yeah, but like, they're just saying that they didn't smell it, so it's just adding to it. You know what I mean? There was no burning meat. Children weren't burnt.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on.
The fire ended up being blamed on faulty wiring, and in the week following the fire, the Fayetteville Coroner's Office issued death certificates for the 5 missing children. The basement of the house still remained, and later George would cover the former basement with 5 feet of dirt to cremate a memorial for his children. However, soon after the fire, George and Jenny started to believe that their children weren't really dead and were in fact kidnapped. They believed the fire was deliberately set to distract them and wasn't due to the faulty wiring at all. In fact, earlier that fall, George had the wiring checked by a power company who deemed the wiring in his house to be in perfect working order.
So they're really convinced now that this was a kidnapping.
Yeah, basically, well, I'm getting to that. There's more. So before we get into the theory that the children may have been kidnapped, let's look at some of George Sauter's personal history to try and give some sort of context as to why the children might have been kidnapped. George Sauter had emigrated from Italy, and the area in Fayetteville where the Sauters lived had a very small Italian immigrant community. George was very vocal and active in his community, especially about the disdain for Mussolini, which sparked a few heated debates within the community, which led to some to believe that the debates were the cause of the kidnapping. So let's look at some strange occurrences that might point towards a kidnapping. In the fall, just before the fire, a life insurance salesman came to the Sauter home, and upon realising that a sale wasn't working out, he became infuriated, yelling at George saying, quote, "Your goddamn house is going up in smoke and your children are going to be destroyed. You're going to pay for the dirty remarks you have been making about the Mussolini."
Well, I mean, I don't mean to point out the obvious here, but I think we've found out who set the house on fire.
I think we've nailed it. I think we've got it there.
Yeah, I mean, guy literally, a lunatic salesman walks up to the door a couple of weeks before the house is set on fire, says, "I'm going to set your house on fire, burn your children." Don't think it takes a crime detective.
Do you know
to
what,
work out who
Sam?
did
I
this.
think we've solved it. Should
Yeah.
we just
We'll cut the show
do you
there
wanna-
early.
Yeah, cut
Right,
there.
guys, that's a wrap. Let's go home. No, I assume you've got more of the story to tell.
In the days leading up to the fire, two of the older sons spotted a man eerily watching the younger Sauter children come home from school, and a witness to the fire even said he spotted someone leaving the scene with what looked like the kind of tools used to remove someone's engine, maybe explaining why George Sauter's coal trucks wouldn't start the night of the fire. Also on the night of the fire, Jenny made an observation that would be crucial in the case. During the night, the phone rang, and when Jenny got up to answer, she noticed that the house lights were on. But if the faulty wiring started the fire, the lights wouldn't have been on to begin with. Jenny also heard something hard hit the ceiling of the house and roll across the floor while she was trying to fall asleep. But at the time, she thought nothing of it. Sometime after the fire, the family visited the memorial George had set up, and Sylvia found a hard rubber object in the yard. Jenny believed that that was what caused the loud bang she heard that night. After inspection, the object looked like a napalm pineapple bomb, similar to the ones used in the war at the time.
Right, I don't want to just assume anything here because, like I said, I don't know much about this story, but it's starting to seem more and more like someone's gone out of their way to deliberately set the house on fire here.
Yeah, I mean, like kidnapping or not, someone has purposely caused this fire. This wasn't faulty wiring, and it wasn't some sort of accident.
Yeah, there's definitely some corruption going on here or
Yeah,
something dodgy.
definitely this has been a planned thing,
Yeah.
hasn't it?
Definitely.
After hearing about these strange occurrences, Jenny refused to believe that the fire could have turned her children's bones into ash. She started experimenting with burning different animal bones, and all left remains. She also spoke to a crematorium employee who told her that the bones would have been left behind even if the body was burned at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours, but their Sauter home only burned for around 45 minutes.
I think that's, sorry, just to bring up this slightly disturbing point there. That
Yeah.
the mother of 9 children is in her spare time. I know she's investigating and obviously she wants to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
But you can't imagine a mother going home and burning different animal
Yeah,
bones.
she's been sat there like in her wee science lab burning like different animal bones, like checking if they leave remains. And I'm sure that would be like pretty traumatizing considering there's like half of these people are believing that her children burnt to death. So
Yeah, I mean, and even on a serious point, I mean, the fact that they've gone to a crematorium specialist and he said that there's no way that the bones could have been burnt. I mean,
yeah,
it
after
just-
2 hours as well.
Yeah, it's just another kind of red flag in this investigation that those children were kidnapped. They weren't killed
Yeah.
in a house fire.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with you there. The first occurred that night while the fire was still burning. A woman claimed to see the children in a car that drove by while the fire was still burning. Around 50 miles west of Fayetteville, a woman who worked in a tourist shop told the police that she served the children breakfast the morning after the fire and that they were in a car with a Florida license plate. I mean, that's kind of like this woman saying she served these children breakfast.
Yeah, I'm
Is
sure
that not
that-
enough to just be like, right, well, they're still alive somewhere?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing too. I mean, imagine if you're kidnapping, you've just kidnapped 5 children, and then the next day you're like, oh,
Take them out for a nice wee breakfast.
let's stop and get breakfast.
Get them a nice
Sure,
breakfast.
why not?
I mean, you're gonna get kidnapped, but at least we'll give you a nice breakfast to start it off anyway.
Yeah, that definitely sounds suspicious. And I mean, too, like, but then why wouldn't, you know, if you've been abducted and kidnapped, and then you're in a public place with
Yeah, you're gonna be like,
strange Italian people, surely you're gonna try and
Yeah.
communicate in some way with someone or tell someone what's going on.
but you don't know who these people are, and you don't know what they've said to these children as well.
True,
So
I
you have
mean,
to think
yeah.
about that.
They could be threatening them, yeah.
Yeah, well, listen to this next part. At a hotel in Charleston, a woman claimed to see the four of the children about a week after the fire. Here's a quote from her statement to the police. The children were accompanied by 2 women and 2 men, all of Italian extraction. I did not remember the exact date. I tried to talk to the children in a friendly manner, but the man appeared hostile and refused to allow me to talk to these children. I sensed that I was being frozen out, and so I said nothing more. They left early the next morning, end quote. So, I mean, she's basically saying she tried to talk to them and they weren't letting the children speak, so...
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that that's now multiple eyewitnesses have come
Of
forward.
4 children, and you don't often see 4 children with 2 men and 2 women
Yeah, exactly.
at a
And-
time.
And the fact that in the statement she specifically described them as Italian extraction
Yeah.
as well, knowing obviously George
His-
Sauter's Italian past.
Yes.
So again, more red flags. in this
Definitely,
case.
yeah. A few years later, George saw a photo of some school children in New York City, and one of the children looked like his missing daughter, Betty. George drove the whole way to New York to investigate, but upon finding the child's parents, they refused to speak to him. I mean, there you go again. Why would they not speak to him? That's strange.
Yeah, exactly.
If someone's coming to you being like, that's my child, you'd at least be like, it's not your child, it's my child.
Yeah, I mean,
The fact that they wouldn't say anything is like,
yeah, it's more suspicious behaviour, and you know, more and more kind of questions are popping up here. But I mean, I think it's pretty
they're making
safe.
it worse for themselves
Yeah.
here, really, aren't they?
It's pretty safe to say that these kids did not die in a house fire.
100%. I'm with you there, yeah, definitely.
They're probably still out there today. Even
I think so, yeah. Well, we'll get to that. In 1947, 2 years after the fire, George and Jenny attempted to involve the FBI, who did in fact offer to help, but the fire department and the police both denied their offer for some reason. George and Jenny would later hire a private investigator called C.C. Tinsley, who ended up discovering that a member of the coroner's jury who decided the fire was an accident was the same life insurance salesman who threatened George earlier in the fall.
Hold on a minute. Did I just hear you right there? The same lunatic salesman that came to the door and threatens the family, says, I'm going to burn your house down with your children inside it. I mean, that same guy is now on the jury deciding the fate of whether that.
Yeah, so he
crime is
decided it was an accident. He was like, yep, that was an accident.
I mean, who comes up with this jury? Like,
They've literally walked around and been like, right, who are the most dangerous people? You're suspicious. We're going to use you. Come
Yeah,
on,
exactly.
come on up here.
it doesn't say a lot about the justice system in Fayetteville or
really
the
doesn't, no.
emergency services. I mean, we've got the fire department arriving 7 hours late to the fire. We've got police who aren't obviously inquiring about,
Yeah,
asking the
refusing to
right questions for these lunatic salesmen that get to be on the jury. I mean, what is going on here?
Seriously, some issues in this town, like, definitely.
Definitely.
In August 1949, the Sauters hired a pathologist named Oscar B. Hunter, who dug up the dirt over the Sauter basement and found 4 shards of human vertebrae, which he then sent away for analysis. They ended up concluding that the bones belonged to a 16 to 17-year-old person, but the oldest Sauter child was only 14, leading them to believe that the bones could not belong to any of the Sauter children. Later that year, West Virginia Governor O.K.L. Patterson called a hearing in the state capitol where he officially declared the case to be closed, telling George and Jenny that their search was, quote, hopeless, end quote.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of rich. Hopeless, describing the case as hopeless. Yeah, it's not as if, you've got like stacks of evidence that
I mean, we
suggests that
pretty much
there's
solved this
corruption
case,
going
and
on
they're
here.
calling it hopeless.
I mean, let's go through some of the points. Lunatic salesman threatening to burn down the house and kill the children. You've got no bones left at the crime scene. Bones
Big bomb found on the
yeah,
ground.
bomb found. Bones that you do find don't belong to the children, so maybe somebody else has been murdered.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you go to the state capitol and they say that, oh no, this is hopeless. We don't.
This is hopeless. We have nothing.
We have nothing here.
We
There's
have
no-
nothing.
This was just a simple house fire.
Yeah.
No. Sorry.
No, definitely not. George and Jenny then set up a billboard on Route 16 where it remained for nearly 40 years. The billboard kept the story alive and mentioned details such as the fact that the faulty wiring did not cause the fire, the fact that there was no bones, and lastly accused the law officers involved in a cover-up, asking, quote, "What did they have to gain by making us suffer all these years of injustice? Why did they lie and force us to accept those lies?" End quote. Over the years, more tips came in, but all ended up empty. However, a new hopeful tip came in 1968, 23 years after the fire, in the form of a photograph which was addressed to Jenny specifically. The photo had no return address but did have a postmark from Kentucky. The photo was of a man in his mid-20s who George and Jenny believed to be their missing son, Lewis. On the back of the photo was a handwritten note saying, "Lewis Sauter, I love brother Frankie, little boys, A90132 or 35, end quote." Whatever that means anyway.
No idea.
But that's something, I mean, I'm pretty sure as a parent you can recognise your own child even that far on.
Yeah.
Do you think so? 23 years later you'd recognise your child?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's suspicious. But I mean, why would somebody want to send them that card if they didn't genuinely believe that it was their child?
Yeah.
You know? I mean, unless someone's playing a really, bad prank.
But 23 years later, why would someone want to do that? That doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. But I mean, these parents are obviously committed. I mean, 40 years, nearly
Yeah,
40 years after they put up the billboard. I mean, and they have every right to, because I mean, like we just said earlier, there's stacks of evidence that suggest that there's definitely something.
Yeah, you wouldn't let it go. I reckon you would keep going, like,
yeah, exactly.
till the day you die, to like find out what happened to your children. When you have such like clear evidence that they didn't die in that house fire, you're gonna keep going, aren't you?
Definitely. Yeah.
So you're gonna cling on to things like that. The Sauters ended up hiring a private detective to go to Kentucky and investigate, but strangely, the detective was never heard from again.
Right, okay. So, just let me get this straight here. A detective, a man whose job it is to find missing people, goes missing?
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, that's pretty ironic, like, I mean, isn't that's like a fish drowning in water? I mean, why? I don't understand that.
Yeah, that's telling you something, like if a detective can go missing himself, that's...
Yeah, I mean, it shows you're going up against pretty powerful people if they have the ability to make a private detective disappear. I think maybe you should just kind of end the search there.
Yeah, I think you're not going to get anywhere now, like. George Sauter passed away in 1969, aged 74, and Jenny passed away in 1989 at the age of 85. Sylvia, who was the youngest at the time of the fire, is the only Sauter child to still be alive. She fully believes that her siblings did not die in the fire that night. Her daughter, Jenny Henthorne, told the Times West Virginian to post any information off web sleuths. She says, quote, "My mum promised my grandmother she would never let the story die, and that's what my brother and I are doing now," end quote. And now, after all these years, the question still remains. What really happened to the Sauter children that night? Was this really the result of a tragic accidental fire, or were the children actually kidnapped? But until then, we might never know. So what do you think happened?
Well, I mean, it's obviously a very complicated story,
Yeah.
and there's a lot to the plot, and a lot of evidence came up. I mean, I think it's pretty clear to see that this was not an accidental house fire.
Yeah,
And
I think we can all say that. This
Yeah.
was not an accident. I'm unsure as to how these people were believing it all this time.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, it doesn't reflect very well on the Fayetteville emergency services. So, I mean, the police
Yeah.
have obviously done a terrible job with this, and then the fire department.
And the
have
fact
already
even the
signed off on it.
FBI got nowhere with it, like
Yeah, I
nothing
know.
came back from them, so...
What do you gain? I mean, they obviously must have been hiding something, because why would you not want to, cooperate with the FBI?
Yeah, I mean, I think I 100% believe the children were kidnapped by like Italian mafia,
Yeah.
somewhere along the
definitely could
line, like that is pretty much certain, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it could have been something that's been planned out for a while now, and very professionally done. But I mean, you've got just the amount of red flags to come up in this case about, blamed on faulty wiring. We know there was nothing wrong with the wiring.
Yeah.
The bomb being found, no bones left behind. We've
Yeah.
still got this lunatic salesman who's probably out there still running around.
He's still floating about on another jury somewhere else.
Burning
Like,
down houses and killing children and telling them 2 weeks beforehand that he's going to do it.
yeah, he's had something to do with it. Whether or not he's been told to,
Yeah.
be a part of this, or like what's actually happened there, but he's definitely been involved, and the children were definitely kidnapped, I think, for sure.
Yeah. And then you've got the fact that you've got detectives who are supposed to be finding missing people going missing.
Yeah.
And then you've got
Fire department taking 7 hours to
Yeah.
get there.
And then like the eyewitnesses, like maybe okay, one or two have maybe gave false stories or maybe misseen something, but the
Yeah.
fact that we're now getting like 3 or 4 people
Yeah.
saying that they're saying the same thing,
Someone's seen something, yeah, definitely.
there's definitely
100%.
something dodgy going on.
And that's us for this week. We'll see you next week when we look at the disturbing murders of Ketty Cabin.
Stay safe out there. If you have any information about the Sodder children, write into us at websleuths.com and we'll see you next week.